Everyone, so we're in WA. We're near a place called Hyden. We're actually in Calgarin, in the RV place there, which we have a loan, and it's been raining a bit and storming. The bus is full of dust. We've been traveling for quite a few days, and the last road was pretty was interesting, and so we've got too much work to do in the bus to do a show tonight. So I'm going to play a classic Cafe Lockdown. This was our first interview with Reiner Fuellmich, and I was in Portland, I think, when we got the call. I was with Wendy and Cret and a few other people on this small convoy, and we got the news that, hey, Reiner Fuellmich wants to do the interview. Can you do it in like an hour or something? And we're like going, oh my God. And we're just rushing around trying, where do we do it? Where do we do it from? Where do we get a signal? Because we had no, look, my beard's all from the dust. And finally, we found a pub. They let us in the back. It was a dodgy internet. I'm sitting there trying to look all cool and calm and collected, and we're just about to interview who was then seen as basically one of the leaders of the movement. He really was. Reiner Fuellmich was seen, even though we've never had declared leaders. It was clear that he was incredibly powerful, and we thought that he could actually enact change. And of course now he's in jail. And yeah, we're going to play this, and so you can see from his time he talks about what he's trying to achieve and everything that's going on, and then you can see where he is now. So yeah, so sorry for not doing a show tonight, but we're going to have the night off, and I will see you back on Sunday with Liz Gunn and Paul Oosterhouse, and they have Liz has an extraordinary document she's uncovered with a Freedom of Information Act or request in New Zealand, which clearly shows that before they rolled out the vaccines, before COVID had even arrived in New Zealand, the health department, the health minister knew it wasn't that dangerous, knew it didn't transmit, or whatever, the transmission of it wasn't that bad. So they knew it was not a pandemic. They knew this was not dangerous. And yet they still went ahead and vaccinated everybody and ostracized anyone who didn't. This is like finding a missing jigsaw piece. It's them, the ones who forced you to get it, admitting that they knew before they banned ivermectin, before they'd, which would have well, I'm not even bothered saying the word, I'm too tired. But they banned all the things that would have worked naturally, and they forced you to, at the price of your job or being ostracized from society, to take the vaccine. And why that doesn't make people angry, I don't know. And now what's even worse, they ignore the injured. They ignore the injured. And yeah, and a lot of people, I think, to actually just be heard, to have their injuries taken seriously, they don't claim it's a vaccine injury. They just claim they've got long COVID. But unfortunately, in my belief, I think long COVID is a vaccine injury. And I feel sorry for the people who can't grapple with that fact. Anyway, Reiner Fuellmich on this show, and I hope you enjoy it.
It was raining last night. I could hear it dancing on the roof. I fell asleep listening to the beauty of rain. But when I woke, you were gone. Someone had used their hate to take you away. And so the rain of last night is now raining inside of me. I think the angels just might be standing up to welcome you home, as we remain here fighting in the trench that just grew colder. But despite the shot, I know you're not dead. Instead, you're leaving light could become our new dawn. I wonder if when your mother first held you, has all the love you was a dawn in her eyes. Did if she ever sensed then that a warrior was here, with a tongue for a sword and the armor of truth. For in a darkening world that's being turned upside down, you were a single man that rose until we could see you from here. How many roads must a man walk down before we call him a man? Well, I'm on your road, to try and emulate you by constructing a sign that reads Charlie Kirk, a man passed this way. On his journey to the son who he knew, if we faithfully followed, would one day lead us home. On his journey to the son who Charlie believed, if we faithfully followed, would one day lead us all home.
Okay, apologies for that. We're actually, Australia is supposed to have the best internet in the world, but it's actually crap. Now, where did we leave off? We left off with Armageddon and World War III, if I'm correct. Yeah.
Yeah, we left off at how they're going to need how they're going to need to use another tool out of their toolbox in order to keep the panic mode going.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many tools. Whether it's America who does something with the Biden administration, the midterms, or whether it's Ukraine, who knows? But what I want to ask you is, what are you targeting in terms of what you're seeking out to do, Reiner, with all your cases? You've told us about some of your cases, but give us the bigger picture of what is the ultimate target and goal that you're trying to do, and then maybe you can tell us about the things that are your obstacles in getting there.
I think what we need to do is we need to use what the Anglo-American legal system has to offer us. Here in Germany, for example, or any place in Europe, there are no class actions. I believe that this is one of the most powerful tools in the Anglo-American judicial system. I don't know if do you need me to explain what this is about? What a class action?
We know what class that we're familiar.
No, we know that.
We have them here.
Okay. And I'm involved in several groups of American lawyers who are working on several different class actions. There's one group that represents, I think, 200,000 members of the military who are either going to go for damages or fight the vaccine mandates. Then there's a group of lawyers who are helping victims of remdesivir, because that is the treatment protocol which Fauci ordered, full well knowing that remdesivir can be deadly, and it was in many cases. And then there's another group of attorneys who are going to file a case, a complaint for damages, probably for vaccine damages, because this is what's getting everyone's attention now. All of the adverse effects cannot be swept under the rug anymore. And if that case is, if the judge, the court, allows this case to go forward as a class action case, and that means that everyone who suffered similar damages can join the class, and then this case goes to trial. If the what is called representative plaintiff, someone who suffered typical damages, if he wins after all the evidence comes,
who's the named defendant in a case like that? Is it big pharmaceutical companies, or is it doctors, or is it the government like Fauci, and or who is it?
I think there are going to be a number of these defendants in these cases. One of them is obviously going to be Fauci. It's also going to be probably the CDC, probably members of the government who push this, members of the mainstream media. We have an excellent legal opinion by Professor Martin Schwab. It's 189 pages long, which explains in great detail how, on what factual basis he believes that the media can be held liable, and what the legal analysis is, which you need to apply to this. But they will not get out of this unscathed. They're not going to be let off the hook, because that's who they use. Our politicians, who are not our politicians, but rather their creature, for the last 30 years or so, most of our politicians are not our politicians, but products of the World Economic Forum's Young Global Leaders Program, which is a CIA funded enterprise right from the start. I don't know if you know this. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What do you think will happen, Reiner? What do you think will happen, Reiner, if the law fails us? Because in Australia at the moment, most people feel we're lawless. Their emergency powers have overridden our constitution. We've had a lot of cases go to court and the judges just throw them out. I've interviewed a lot of barristers who say the judges threw them out. They couldn't throw them out. They actually went against, set legal precedents by throwing them out, but they just threw them out. So surely, I hate to say it because it'll get us all kicked off everything, surely the only thing left after that is revolution.
Well, it is, of course, extremely important to find the right venue and to find the right lawyers. As far as the lawyers are concerned, it's not enough to have someone working for you as a lawyer who knows what he's doing, who is experienced. But in this case, you have to fully believe in what we're fighting here. You have to understand as a lawyer that these are crimes against humanity. There cannot be any doubt about this. Crimes against humanity.
Yeah, that's no doubt.
But you also have to pick the right venue. Here in Europe, it's going to be next to impossible to find the right venue. But even here, some decisions came down that, for example, very recently, a woman judge in Italy decided that the vaccine mandate, which a female psychologist, thought that this is illegal. And in great detail, she explained how the Nuremberg Code says you can't do that. These are medical experiments. She explicitly stated in her decision that we're not dealing with vaccines, we're dealing with experimental substances that are being injected into our bodies, and nobody can be forced to take these shots. And she even went so far as to see the parallels, write this down in her opinion, between what we're seeing now and what happened in the Third Reich under Hitler. So there are these instances of courage, I guess. It's funny how I have to say that a judge needs to be courageous in order to follow the law. But there still are these instances of individual courage. But as Europe as a whole is, I think, pretty much lost as far as the judiciary is concerned, at least at this point, not just because of the case that I told you about in Weimar, but there are three very well-written decisions. The first one came from Portugal, the second one from Vienna, Austria, and the third one is Weimar. And then outside of Europe and Turkey, there's a fourth decision that explicitly states that the PCR test can never, under no circumstance, be a basis for any of the measures, because no matter how you apply the PCR test, it can never, ever tell you anything about infections.
Yeah,
if you want to know
correct.
why, I'll tell you. But those 4 decisions came down. One of them is, I think the one in Portugal, that's the first one in October 2020. It was about 4 German tourists who had entered the country, one of them, and stayed at a hotel. One of them had tested positive. That's the only thing. He only had tested positive, no symptoms, nothing. And then they quarantined him in his hotel room. And because the others had been in touch with him, they quarantined them as well. So the judge, or the appellate court, even the trial court, and then the appellate court decided, nope, PCR tests cannot tell you anything about infections. There's no factual basis for this, and therefore there's no legal basis. They had to let them go free. But the governments, which are, of course, products of the World Economic Forum's Young Global Leader program, the governments didn't care. That is very different in the United States, and it is also different in India. In India, we have a colleague, her name is Deepali Ojha. She was also on our international team of lawyers on this model grand jury proceeding of the Corona Investigative Committee. And she updates us about the situation in India. Of course, the mainstream media don't report anything of this, but very recently, Bill Gates was informed by the Indian investigative authorities. I think they have a something similar to the American FBI, only much more independent. And Bill Gates was informed that there are several investigations going on against him for mass murder through the so-called vaccines. So some parts in this world, in some parts of this world, the judiciary is still functioning. The same is true for some parts of the United States. The most important example, I think, is on April the 18th, when a federal judge in Florida decided that the government doesn't have the power to issue mask mandates on planes, trains, in airports, and in train stations.
I remember that.
You know, separation of powers. There is a danger of an administrative state coming into existence, taking over. You know, just like in the old times when the kings thought they could do anything they want. Well, they couldn't, because they needed their administration. But then the administration realized, the king needs us, but we don't need them. So Fauci, who seems to have taken over the government, well, recently he seems to be thrown under the bus, but Fauci, who was standing next to Trump, next to Biden, he had issued, through the CDC, he had issued these mask mandates. And this judge decided, nope, the government does not have the power to do this. You cannot bypass the legislators. You have to ask the legislators if you want to pass such a law, because they're the only ones whose power is directly derived from the people, not the administration. So totally different from what we saw in Europe and in Turkey. The government immediately responded when this decision came down, and the mask mandates were gone. You remember the pictures of people dancing in the cabin, even the pilots coming into the cabin and dancing with the passengers. That was the most powerful sign ever, because that showed you how the public really feels, and how there's I think 90% of the people in the United States are sick and tired of this. At least 50% of the people do understand that their government is not their government, for different reasons. Not all of them understand.
I agree. I think there was a case in the Supreme Court of America. Was it a month or two ago, where it was decided? What was it? 5-4 in favor that. It was an attack on the administrative state, the administrative powers that were being exercised. I don't remember the case. I don't remember the details, but I remember hearing about it from colleagues. Do you know anything about that case or not?
I'm getting it confused, because there are 2 such cases, but you're right. One of the cases was exactly stating that there is no such thing as the administrative state. You have to go through the legislature if you want to pass such egregious measures. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the problem. That's what they've done. They've run on these so-called emergency bills, and they've done exactly the same here. What are the biggest obstacles you're finding in your cases as you do all this work?
Oh, here in Europe, it's that the courts of law don't function anymore. I know that there's a group of judges and prosecutors in this country even who are fighting this, but only from behind the scenes. They can't come out into the open. No one knows. I do, but no one really knows who is with this group. It's probably 100 or so judges, but not many more. So the worst obstacle is the fact that there is no judiciary anymore. However, there is in the United States. And the only thing you have to do there is find the right lawyers, which I think is not that bad, not that difficult. We do have a large group of colleagues in the United States who really know what's going on and who are willing to fight the system openly, who have not decided to go into hiding, which is true for most of the European or especially the German lawyers. And then you have to find the right venue. One of the better venues is probably Florida. Maybe North and South Dakota, maybe Texas. Some of the places in Texas will still function. Maybe even Northern California, which is where my ranch is. That's another. Yeah, this is the venue which we're talking about.
That's enigmatic though, because that's a blue state.
Well, there's a big difference between Northern California and Southern California. Parts of Northern California are people. There are rumors going around that Florida, Texas, and parts of Northern California, maybe North and South Dakota, may actually leave the union because they don't want to play along with this anymore. They may secede. That's what these rumors are saying. And here's why parts of Northern California are thinking that they don't need the rest of the state. One is they hate the propaganda coming out of Hollywood. And the second reason is that they're stealing our water. That's what many of the ranchers up there feel. They're stealing our water, diverting the water down to Southern California where they're wasting it. This is a pretty general feeling amongst the people who live up there. Yeah.
How can we help, Reiner? We're waiting here on you to sort of save us. Like they talk about white hats and all that, but how can we help? Because our country is apathetic. It's been apathetic for decades about politics, about everything. That's the biggest hurdle we're facing isn't the big pharma, isn't our government. It's our own indifference to our destruction. It's like I see people like the freedom movement goes, we're at war. This is some strange war we've never faced for a war. The other mob are just having their coffees like everything's fine. And they don't even if they're having adverse reactions, they go, oh, it can't be the jab, it's just coincidence. How can we help you as like one of the leaders of what we're doing in any way? In any way we can join the fight, apart from sharing your voice.
Right. Here. Yeah.
Well, I keep trying to explain that none of us individually can do anything. Neither Bobby Kennedy or I, or if you look at the Professor Susharit Bhakti, who's a very powerful voice and who just recently, just this past weekend, explained to this group of healthcare workers in Athens that the situation is far worse than most people understand, because with the introduction of mRNA vaccines, not just for COVID-19, but all the other so-called vaccines as well, he says this is going to be deadly on a scale that is unimaginable. Plus, it is changing people's personalities. Most of us used to think, or I used to think, this is just my imagination, but he says, no, it's not. It's changing people's personalities, breaking people's wills. It's making them docile. This is the kind of thing that needs to continue to go out into the open. It needs to be exposed. None of us can do this individual. I keep saying this over and over and over again. The only thing we can do is connect with each other, share the information that we have, and try and set something up that is separate from this corrupt and collapsing system, our own judiciary in our regions, because this is what I'm one of the co-leaders of this new German party called Die Basis, which is the base. It's about grassroots democracy. It's about how democracy is a bottom up and not top down, how we should disconnect from all of these corrupt global corporations and NGOs, which are run by the same people. Get out of the World Health Organization, leave NATO, the EU, totally corrupt, a totally corrupt institution. All of these global institutions, leave them to play with themselves and let us focus on what we need, what we want in our regions, because we know exactly what's good for us in our regions. We know what, for example, in, I don't know, Victoria is probably too big a state, but let's just choose one part of Victoria where, I don't know, 1,000 or 10,000 people live. They can decide for themselves what kind of judiciary, what kind of healthcare system, what kind of education.
Community.
Yeah, because we don't need anyone to tell us. That's probably
and that's
the most
actually forming
important.
here. I'm recording those, Reiner. Ever I go, people are. I was in Traralgon, a little town. There's a big group of people there who are forming communities. It's almost happening organically. But
Yes.
when it comes to war, though, people don't like going to war. They've got to be convinced to go to war. And we're sort of convincing them to go to war against basically who they think are their protectors. And when I mean war, I don't mean physical war. I mean just joining the fight in some way. So we're like fighting for freedom. But from your perspective, if you want somebody to fight, they have to fight for something. So how would you define freedom?
Freedom is the most important value that we have. It is not for nothing that the American Constitution starts out with that the American people have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Liberty, that's what freedom is about. The German Constitution starts out with that the dignity of the people is the most important thing for everyone. I do believe that freedom is dignity, and freedom is probably the same thing. You can't have there's no dignity if you don't have freedom. But freedom is the right to be left alone, among other things, the right to be left alone by the government. And that is why the American people decided, and I changed my mind completely on this issue, why they decided after they had written their constitution, they realized, oh, there are a few things missing. Then they had the First Amendment. That's about freedom of speech, because that is the foundation for democracy. There cannot be democracy if you don't have freedom of speech. Soon after, they introduced the Second Amendment, which is the right to bear arms. And I used to think, oh man, there's too many guns in the United States. Look at all these mass shootings. In the meantime, I've changed my mind because I know what's behind this. Behind the introduction of the Second Amendment is the fact that most of the people who came to the United States had to flee from countries like England.
They don't trust government,
from their own government, because
That's
they were
right.
persecuted for political or religious reasons. And that's why they said, if this is ever going to happen again, we want to be able to defend ourselves. So that's what this is about. That's probably one of the reasons, maybe the most important reason, why the government, when that aforementioned decision in Florida came down against the mask mandates, why they did not dare defy the will of the people, because that's what the judge had decided in the name of the people. No mask mandates. If you try to ignore the will of the people, that could be a mistake.
Well, if you follow what's going on in America, you'll know that by subterfuge, the government is trying to defeat the First and Second Amendment. And I'm not going to go into the granular details, but the fact is that they're trying to do it, and they're every day getting closer and closer to it, which is a problem. Tell me something, Reiner. What should we know that we don't? you have an insight that we don't have.
I think the most important thing that, but I think you do know it. The resistance does know about this, but maybe not as much as they should. Had it not been for the PCR test, there wouldn't be any cases. If there weren't any cases, there would never have been the declaration of a public health emergency of international concern. Fake, PHEIC, fake, you know, they're laughing at us. They really are. And had it not been for this public health emergency of international concern, there wouldn't be any so-called vaccinations. So this is what's behind this. And we know this not because I had a bad dream, but because we interviewed, among others, former employees and advisors to the World Health Organization. One of them is Dr. Astrid Stuckelberger, and the other one is Dr. Sylvia Barron. And this is what they told us. Or let me give you a brief introduction. In September of 2019, the world economic crisis, which had started in 2009 as a housing crisis in the United States. If you ever have the time, watch that movie, The Big Short. It explains everything. It also shows you that Deutsche Bank is a major player in this fraudulent scheme. But in September of 2019, this thing was about to pop up again, because instead of taking those who were responsible for this major bank fraud, because that's what it is, a bank fraud that started this world economic crisis, which turned into a euro crisis, which then enabled them to steal everything from the Greek. Instead of taking those who are responsible to the courts of law, locking them up, jailing them, the only thing that they had done, our politicians, who were their politicians, is printed money. They had printed money, that's all. That's no way to solve an economic crisis. So in September of 2019, this thing was popping up again. There was a repo crisis, which means that banks were not willing to lend each other money overnight anymore. That would have destroyed everything. Most of all, their assets, because the other side, they're the ones who are holding most of the shares in all these global corporations. So they needed to do something in order to distract our attention from what is going on there, how they had been looting and plundering. This is how I always say it, looting and plundering our public coffers for decades by way of private-public partnerships on the platform of the World Economic Forum. This is not private-public partnerships. It's a hostile takeover of our politicians, our public agencies, by immensely rich individuals who exert their power through global corporations. And they meet in Davos once a year. So this thing was blowing up again. It was about to blow up again. And there's a paper written by BlackRock, I think, summary of what happened at Jackson Hole, which is where the central bankers meet once a year, Jackson Hole in Wyoming. And in essence, this is what it says. This is my own words, I'm not quoting. Oh my God, they're on to us. We need to take drastic measures in order to divert their attention from there, where we're stealing everything, and turn their attention in a different direction. We need to scare the shit out of them. That's my words, not theirs. The drastic measures is what they've been planning for a long time, but they were pushed, I believe, into an early start, and that's this pandemic. But there weren't any cases in early 2020, no cases whatsoever, despite all these weird pictures of people falling over, seemingly dead.
That was Hollywood. That was such Hollywood.
Yeah. We don't know what happened in China, but there were no cases. When the people who are behind, or the donors to the World Health Organization, the most important donor is, by the way, Germany now. It's not Bill Gates anymore, it's Germany. But Germany is fully in the hands of Bill Gates. So when they pushed the World Health Organization to declare a public health emergency of international concern in early 2020, January of 2020, they didn't have any cases. Then they turned to another one of their creatures, a person by the name of Professor Dr. Drosten from Charité University in Berlin, and asked him, come up with cases and invent something else to scare people. And that's what he did. He came up with asymptomatic infections, which is a lie. There is no such thing as asymptomatic infections. If you're asymptomatic, you're healthy, you're okay.
Right.
So what are you going to do? Go see a doctor? You can go see a doctor and tell him, oh, I have a problem. And the first thing he's going to ask you is, what symptoms do you have? And you're going to say, oh, I watched too much Fauci or Drosten. Oh, yeah, right. Well, there's no such thing as asymptomatic infections, but they needed this as a justification for mass screening of perfectly healthy people.
Yeah.
Second line, Drosten have invented a PCR test which can detect infections. Now, there are several reasons why this is impossible. One of the most important ones is that the true inventor of the PCR test, a brilliant, funny, witty genius by the name of Kary Mullis, who got a Nobel Prize for it in 1992, he kept saying over and over and over again, this is a perfect tool for scientific purposes, but not for diagnostic purposes. Not for diagnostic purposes. But he died shortly before this outbreak, so to speak.
Coincidence.
So, yeah, what a coincidence. And he was only 74 years old, I think. And why can a PCR test not tell us anything about infections? Well, the two reasons that I understand, there's others, but the two reasons that I understand, and therefore I think most other people also understand, is one, it cannot distinguish between dead and live matter. So if a person tests positive, it is highly likely that they test positive because the test finds fragments of your immune system's fight against the common flu or the cold from 4 months ago or so. These fragments stay there, but they're totally harmless. You cannot infect anyone, but these fragments stay there. Usually your immune system comes up when a virus attacks, especially when it's a respiratory virus. It enters, that's why it's called respiratory, through the nose and the throat. But the immune system comes up, your mucosa protects you and fights off the virus. Unless, of course, you circumvent it and inject the virus directly into the bloodstream, which is happening. So that's one reason. The second reason is that you need a whole virus for an infection. You need a whole virus to enter your cells and start to replicate there. That's when you have symptoms, headache, stomach ache, diarrhea, whatever, but you do have symptoms. And this test it can never find a whole virus. Why? Because whatever you take from the swab is put into a machine and destroyed before it goes in there, squashed, mushed. So the machine only looks at fragments, but not at a whole virus. For these two reasons alone, it is utterly, totally, 1000% impossible for such a test to tell you anything about infections. And now here's how they created the cases, by way of misusing the PCR test. So when Drosten was asked to supply them with cases, they had this first emergency meeting of their emergency committee in, I believe, mid-January, no cases. 2 weeks, but they agreed, because the situation is so dangerous in China, we're going to have to meet again in 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, they had the cases. What had changed? Nothing, except that Drosten had supplied them with his test. How did he use his test? Many, many, many blatant mistakes were made. We think we are absolutely certain that these are not mistakes, but this is done on purpose. But the most important thing that explains how they intentionally created cases to intentionally be able to use untested new drugs is the cycles of amplification. Whatever you take from the swabs, put it into a machine is being magnified. And this magnification process is called cycles of amplification. 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, et cetera, et cetera. Now, everyone agrees in the meantime, even the New York Times agrees that at 24 cycles of amplification, I think at that point you're making, I don't know, millions, if not hundreds of millions of copies of the original.
So you can find anything.
Yeah, you can find anything. At 24 cycles of amplification, it becomes totally unscientific. Dr. Mike Yeadon, who is now a very good friend of mine, And other professors of biology told us at 35 cycles of amplification, you end up with at least 90-something% false positives. The Drosten test, which served as the blueprint for the rest of the world and was recommended to the rest of the world by the World Health Organization, was set at not 35, but at 45 cycles of amplification. That's how they created the cases. And now, finally, they were able to declare the public health emergency of international concern, PHEIC, pronounced fake. That's why I'm saying they're laughing at us. And that was the only basis, according to their own freely invented guidelines, of course. There's no democratic foundation for this, but it was the only basis for their being able to use untested new drugs on people. Untested new drugs, the so-called vaccines. They needed an international emergency. They needed the cases for the declaration of this pandemic in order to use untested new drugs on people.
And they needed the fear.
So where are they taking us with all of this? What's the agenda? What are they
actually? Sorry, Gadi. Before we go there, can I just ask one question to do that? Just before it leads to that. So COVID-19 was marketing genius. It was a marketing attack. They marketed it out, and we proved when monkeypox came along, because we killed monkeypox with memes. We laughed it into they just couldn't do it. And so coming to Gadi's question now, people are waiting for it. They're waiting there to attack the next thing. But I just want to ask one question, because I'm probably going to have to go soon. Where in everything that's happening, the indoctrinations in schools, the law courts falling down, the social contract being broken with the medical establishment and our politicians, where do you find the hope, Reiner? Because I'll tell you, actually, before I go, I'm interviewing lots of people, very ordinary people. I found the hope in one man who's got Asperger's. He's in Tasmania, which is a little state in the island below Australia. And he pushes trolleys in the supermarket. Done it for 15 years, loves it, and supports his elderly parents. He won't take the vaccination. So his parents and him are now struggling financially, but their integrity together is they refuse to take it. They refuse to give in. I find hope in their courage, even though they're nobodies. I find hope in their courage. Where do you find the hope, Reiner?
In just these people, plus in the people who we visited, Professor Susharit Pakti and I visited in Athens this past weekend, all these healthcare workers who will not give in, who will not participate in this ongoing case of mass murder. It is when, we're all of us are being attacked. We're being censored. The first video I ever made, or rather it's the third or fourth one, but the other ones were short ones. The first one I made was on the PCR test. It was, the English version was, I think, 49 minutes. The German version was 50 minutes. And it got 700,000, 1.5 million views, then it went back down to 200,000, and all of a sudden 15 million, and went back down to 150,000, and then all of a sudden it was completely deleted. It was gone. That tells me that someone is deeply afraid of what we have to say. That's where I find the courage. I find the courage because we don't have a choice. I mean, I'm not going to go under. The last sentence I said is in Athens is, some people crack under pressure. I do not, and I never will. And I know that these healthcare workers won't either. I know my father would never have cracked under pressure. I know you won't. That's good enough for me. Because this group of people needs to be connected with each other. And when the time comes, and it'll come soon, this higher power will come to our aid. I'm absolutely convinced of that.
Gadi, I've got a small audience here. Come in, guys. I'm just going to bring them in. They've been sitting in a bar listening to this. Here they are. These are Australians here. They've been listening to you. We're here tomorrow to put a show on in a church hall. We've already been kicked out of one church hall. In the church hall, all we do is try to get the audience to talk. No speeches. We just encourage free conversation, from venting what's going wrong in our communities to trying to come up with solutions. And it's a no censorship show. We actually call it the No Goat Show. So we laugh and we just try to get everyone talking. It goes for about 2 hours. Gadi's been to several, and then people hang around for 2 hours later because they just love free speaking. They love it. So I'm going to ask you, Dr. Reiner Fuellmich, because you probably should do this. Could you put out a plug to Warrnambool, who is probably not, most people don't even know you exist, but the ones that do adore you? Could you say, please go to the No Goat Show?
Please go to the No Goat Church. It's worth it. It'll be fun.
Thank you. It's been lovely to speak to you, Ryan. Thank you.
Oh, it's been an honor.
It's very rare that Michael and I say very little, but we were just I'm
in awe.
Stoked.
I'm in awe of your courage, Reiner. I am. So I'd say the people are too.
Yeah, not only his courage,
we're in awe.
The wealth of knowledge is astounding, absolutely astounding.
And in this gathering darkness, and it is gathering, I know it must be very hard for you, Doctor. It must be very hard, but you are a beacon of hope, my brother. You're a beacon of hope to all of us. Even if I just see you, you're just a beacon of hope, and I'm honored to have been in your light today. Absolutely love. See, that's
absolutely
love.
I can see the love.
Yeah.
And vice versa. Vice versa.
Oh, thank you. And please, Reiner, that our mutual friend Iris,
Iris, love Iris,
put together this thing today. She can hear us. If there's anything you want from us, for me as a lawyer here practicing, I've been doing it for a long time. For Michael, we would be more than happy to help you. You just send us an email, tap us on the shoulder and say, this is what I need you to do, please do it. And we will do it for you.
Actually, I can give you one thing,
and I really
Reiner.
mean that. It's not a small offer. Yeah.
I can give you one thing to take. We've been using this a lot and it works here. It's a way to use science to disprove masks. So if you meet someone that says the mask works, you'd tell them, if I farted now, you'd smell it. And my fart molecules are much bigger than Omicron. So your mask doesn't work. You can do the test wherever you are.
Yeah,
God bless you, brother.
Humor for you.
Thank you so much.
Brother.
Bless you. We really
Thank you. This means a lot to me. Thank you so much, guys. This is what pushes us forward.
Deeply loved here, Reiner.
Deeply loved. Take care, brother.
Thanks.
See you.
to whom we're not quite sure. So head down.